Good afternoon. It's good to see you, students, and I think faculty. Yes, so you are. I hope you're surviving the second week of school. To all of our guests, welcome to Shenandoah Conservatory. It's my pleasure as Dean to welcome you here. Yes, he's here. We'll get started in just a moment. Just a few words, though. American Icons was established to bring conservatory students into closer contact with artists who are not only iconic, but who, like great teachers here, reveal through their life and work a wild openness of heart, a way of being as an artist that is grounded in integrity, embrace of collaboration, generosity of spirit. As one of the most heralded and celebrated musicians alive, Wynton Marsalis is certainly iconic, and for many of you, he doesn't need an introduction, but some of you students don't know him. And so let me briefly explain why he's here and why you should listen. First, some facts and figures, and this is a really partial list. He's produced over 80 albums that have sold over 7 million copies. He was the first and ever only musician to win a classic Grammy Award and a jazz Grammy Award in the same year, 83. He repeated that the following year, and then he won a Grammy Award every year for quite a few years. The famed classical trumpeter Maurice Andre called him potentially the greatest trumpeter of all time. In '97, he became the first jazz musician to win Pulitzer Prize for music, holds numerous titles from many nations, and he has an extraordinary passion for education, and between that artistic excellence and education, he received honorary doctorates from Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Howard, Columbia, University of Pennsylvania, and about 24 other universities. These awards are a big deal, but there are only some of the things you should know. He comes from an extraordinary musical family. He was a phenomenal young virtuoso, probably the fastest developing trumpet player of the century. But it's even more important to know of his development into a master craftsman. The central quality of artistic craftsmanship, you'll remember, is not just mastery, it's the presence of a hunger to continually refine one's craft and oneself. Like great artists before him, Wynton Marsalis is in ongoing development, answerable first and foremost to himself, not to those who wish or prefer he'd embrace or favor certain styles or it's the unexpected, isn't it? Or perform in certain genres. In that ongoing work, he demonstrates and teaches others that finding a truly personal voice is not only the hardest work, it's the most important work. That brings me to the real reason I'm excited that he's here and has been working with our conservatory students on the premiere of his completed Blue Symphony. Wynton Marsalis reminds us that artistry and excellence is not a destination, but a deeply personal journey. He's on such a journey, and observing him from afar, I see in him not only a voracious thirst for learning, but also those dual qualities we find in the best of artists, self-acceptance and self-criticism. Importantly, that self-criticism combines an intolerance for the second rate with an extraordinary regard for collaboration and the dignity of all in our society. Indeed, through his educational work, writings, and performances, he has revealed uniquely powerful messages about jazz, that even above all else, it may uniquely teach respect and trust, can reveal wounds in this society and pathways to healing, can call us to honestly engage with each other as our true selves. He speaks, to put it simply, from a place of profound passion, concern, and awareness. And in bringing his all to the task of his life's work, he has a clarity that enables him to look at young artists with a wise, caring gaze, like that which the great pianist John Lewis could give to fellow musicians. It's a caring look, and I've seen it during his residencies here at Shenandoah. It's a look that can make students admit that, yes, their effort and what they were doing was a bit bullshit. That look elevates because it causes young artists to feel anew the urgency of being true to one's deepest potential and understand afresh that in the arts the work of improvement is never completed. Conservatory students, you'll see and meet some very famous people during your lives, but when all is said and done, only a few of them really have something truly profound to teach you through their life's work. It's my honor and pleasure to introduce to you one of those exceptions, Wynton Marsalis. Being here.
That's the best introduction. I don't think I should say anything.
Well,
I think that's it.
But I'm done.
That's it. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you for being here, and it's been a delight to see you working with our students. This is a big work, the Blue Symphony. How's it going?
It's a pleasure's honor for me. Like we said when we first met, I'm also trying to learn what I'm doing. So I'm learning a lot, and I have just such a love and a feeling for the students first, just as a musician, and as a student. The rehearsals are late at night. You've been already through your day, so they're being very patient with me, and I love them. A lot of times I look at them, I want to hug them, because that's the path that any of us who've played in orchestras and large ensembles know you. Yeah. Especially trumpet players, because we sit for a lot of measures. We're just back there looking around, so I'm very sensitive to it. But it's been an honor for me, as I knew it would be, but yeah. It is.
You've had lots of people who made a big impact on your life along the way. You've met a lot of interesting people. And maybe if you could just share, if I bring up some names and some situations. Sure. There's one moment that you write about with some fondness when you reached out to Sweets Edison.
Right.
And you were young, and people were talking about authentic or not authentic. And he asked you some questions, and could you share with the students here what happened at that moment and how your path grew from there?
Well, I know Sweets Edison is a trumpet player that played with the great Count Basie Orchestra in the 1930s, late 30s. So he's a master of blues trumpet player. Frank Sinatra would not record an album on Columbia in the late 50s without Sweets Edison. So if you ever hear any of Frank Sinatra's records with Nelson Riddle Orchestra and you hear trumpet, that's Sweets Edison playing. I had met him when I was 14 in New Orleans. So we were kind of friends, like how you could be friends when you're 14 with a much older. Of course, in jazz it's very different. Our age divide is not as great as in other fields. But I knew him and I always talked to him. And I didn't like so much his way of playing, I liked him. He was always flirting with everybody. He never saw a woman he didn't flirt with. And he would do funny things all the time. And once he challenged me, he took me into every time when I became older, my early 20s, I was in New York. I started to travel around, I would see him in different places. He would always come pick me up in Los Angeles. He always had a white Biarritz Cadillac. He would pick me up in the Cadillac and we would go to this place called Maurice's Snack and Chat. So I would get breakfast and I would always insult the breakfast and say it's just not as good as New Orleans. And he would always order grits and brains, and I would be like, brains? How can you eat brains? It was always kind of like a thing about eating these brains. Why are you eating brains? So at a certain point, maybe I was 19, I was young, and then I was being critiqued a lot, criticized a lot. I couldn't play with blues, I wasn't playing with feeling, I wasn't this, I wasn't authentic. Yeah. So I asked him, man, what are they talking about? What is all this about? He said, where are you from? I said, New Orleans. He said, what did you grow up playing the music? You around music? I said, yeah. He said, I said, yeah. I answered the affirmative to all the things he knew about me because I had grown up knowing him. And he said, look, man, you got to be yourself. and you can't imitate something that some other people are telling you that you should be. He validated me in a sense, because he told me, you have the pedigree, you have this, you have that, and it's up to you to realize what you are and accept that and be what you are. So stop whining about this. And he would do many things like that. Like, he didn't like my sound. So he'll start saying, you gotta get some more weight on your sound, baby boy. It doesn't sound like a trumpet, it sounds more like a pea shooter. So he actually sent me a trumpet, a Selma K modified. So I was playing Bach trumpet, so he sent me the Selma K modified trumpet. And I got the trumpet. And then when I played the first 2 or 3 notes for him, he looked at me and said, well, it's not the trumpet. So he would also get on me, because he was famous for, he would play just very short phrases, and they would just be just drenched in the blues and soul. So he never played all this kind of, it was always like, doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. He was always bending the notes. And so I was warming up once, I was playing fast, and he looked at me and said, now that's got to be more notes than I played in my entire career. But what was implied underneath it is more notes, but not one of them is of any value. And on and on. Yeah. You know, I could go on and on about the greatness of Sweet Sass and how funny he was.
You mentioned finding your voice. That sounds simple. How hard has it been? How hard is it?
I think maybe it's hard. It's hard when you're younger, and I think it's hard. It's difficult to be confident. For me in my generation, it was a little different because there were so few people playing jazz. Just the fact that you tried to play it real. Yeah. The hardest thing for me was to work through the maze of misinformation. To realize, because there are many layers of misinformation. If you're Black American, you have many layers of misinformation, and not just stuff that comes from white people. It's just whatever. It's just what it is. Just misinformation. Yeah. And if you're an American, you have mazes of information you have to work through, slogans and things that are not accurate, that's not going to serve you well. You have to work through those. Then your own personal misinformation. You've miseducated yourself with just the lies that you've told yourself. Good friend of mine's.
That's a hell of a lot to unravel.
There's a lot. You got to unravel it. So it's harder to be honest with yourself than you think. Yeah. A good friend of mine, Ali Jackson's drummer, his brother's name is Khalil. They grew up in Detroit. They're like almost like sons or little brothers to me. Khalil, their father died when Ali was 11, and Khalil, I think, was 9 or 10. And they survived. They figured out how to work it out because their mother and father were not together. But Khalil, when he was 32 or 33, he wanted to join the military. So he wanted to become an officer. So I called Colin Powell and I asked him, hey, Colin, do you think, because Colin Powell and I used to sit on this dais, and because I'm M, he's P, we sat next to each other and we always talked. And I just asked him, do you think my man's brother can make it to be? And he said, man, tell him to forget it. He'll never make it. So I told him, this is what Colin said.
And that's the source, I mean,
what else? He actually made the highest score ever on the test he had to take. And he became, he's now in the military, and he's now in Iraq. And he told me when the first time he came back, I said, well, what did you learn, man? He said, man, the deepest thing I learned is that I have to be truthful with myself, or I'll put myself in a position to get killed. And I thought that was very revelatory, because he said sometimes your narrative of yourself takes you you get so far out of reality, living inside of what you have to live in to be confident. Yeah. So you have to be able to maintain your confidence, but also while you're maintaining that confidence with whatever your narrative is, you have to also enrich that narrative with actuality and try to make sure that balance, always more and more actuality. Then as you get older and you get more and more responsibilities and you have victimized yourself by enough dumb things that you've done.
And learning from those.
You learn from those constantly, and you continue to do them.
Yeah.
Then your narrative, the world forces you to change your narrative.
Yeah.
And so I think that also it's just a matter of you wanting to do that.
Yeah.
Do you want to do it? And that things many times just come down to what you want to do. Many times a lot of philosophy. Why would somebody shoot somebody? Why would they blow a plane up? Or why would, it's a lot of talking, but the bottom line is they want to do that.
Yeah. You know, one of the things I spend a lot of time thinking about is the difference between good and great teaching, learning, and increasingly I'm suspecting there's a big difference between bad and good teaching, but I'm increasingly suspecting that one of the most important differences between good and great teaching is actually the student's hunger. And I'm curious because when I hear your story, whether it's through books that you've written, interviews that you've done, little asides that you've made during a performance, what I hear is someone who isn't so much that they've been taught by others, but who has sought out lessons to be learned. You know, it's a two-way thing, but what's your thought about the importance of that internal drive for a student's ability to develop?
You know, I think my father was a great teacher. So he was broke. But I learned watching him. And I saw my father play concerts with no people. And one of the greatest lessons, and I'm gonna get around to, one of the greatest lessons I had, I was maybe 11. And I was in a club called Lou and Charlie's on Rampart Street. And Charlie lived above the club, so he would leave many times, and then my father would just lock the back door. This particular night, my father's gig ended at 2, so I would always just hang with my father till 2 because we had to drive back to Kenner, Louisiana, which was like 35 or 40 minutes away. Mm-hmm. And my mama didn't want him on the road by himself because he might fall asleep. So I was sitting in the gig. Sometimes I would go throw darts, or I would listen to the adults talk nasty, and sometimes I would talk nasty with them myself. I'd grown up in clubs. I mean, that's what I liked doing. I didn't so much like hearing what they were playing.
Yeah.
This particular night, no one was there except one guy who was drunk. You know, you grew up in clubs, people are always high, they're always drunk. I mean, it's just life.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal. I mean, it's not like, it wasn't like the world ended because somebody was high.
Yeah.
I'm trying to make you understand the naturalness of the situation. Is it possible to get the lights on?
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
I start to get nervous when I only...
Yeah, they're out there. There they are.
That's what that's much better for me. Now I see y'all, okay? I thought I was like an interrogate police lineup or something. See, I like that much better. That's beautiful. So I went to my father, and there was one guy who was drunk. He was sitting at the table. Now, I had been going to gigs since I was 3.
Yeah.
I mean, my whole life was spent at kind of gigs that were poorly attended. It wasn't like somebody famous playing in front of big people. It was just a guy struggling to play modern jazz in a city that was not interested in hearing it.
Yeah.
It was not like rose-colored glasses with people who were struggling, people who did not have means many times. It was a struggle. They were struggling. So I went to my father. I said, hey, man, let's go. It was like 15 to 2. So I was standing up next to the piano, was against the wall. It was like a kind of upright piano. So when he looked over at me, I pointed to the club and I said, my man is drunk. And my man was laid out. He's not listening to what you're playing. Nobody is in here.
Yeah, yeah.
So he looked at me, and I'm giving y'all a quote, so this is his exact words. He said, man, the gig ends at 2 o'clock. I said, yeah, man, it's 15 minutes to 2. Charlie is gone. Let's go home. He said, man, go sit your ass down and listen to this music till 2 o'clock. I went and sat down, and actually that's the only 15 minutes of the music I listened to.
Yeah. But it was the most important.
Yeah, because I thought, and I listened and played in 15 minutes, and I said, now why would somebody play for no people this way?
Yeah.
And he was playing. And I thought, I want to be like that.
Yeah.
Like that thing that whatever makes a person who has struggled his entire life with something that no one wants to hear, nobody really believes in it, not making money doing it, got a bunch of kids struggling to pay for them, 1:45 in the morning in a random club in New Orleans on Rampart Street that nobody cares about with his 11-year-old son that's looking at an empty club. It's kind of embarrassing. Man, look at this. And I'm joking with him. I mean, it's not a big deal to me.
Yeah.
I'm clowning around. I'm just mad because nobody's there to talk or act crazy with. But so even now, I think all the time, any place I play or any gigs or anything, I always reflect on just that type of seriousness. And it wasn't just my father to talk about teaching. Right. My trumpet teacher in high school was a guy named George Jansen. He was so serious about teaching that when I would start playing America the Beautiful, he would stand up and put his hand over his heart. He would conduct me playing like Bride of the Waves or some cornet solo like it was the New York Philharmonic up there. And he was a guy he had a stroke some years earlier, and it was hard to hear what he was saying. And he had lost the use of his right hand. So he would conduct with his left hand. And I think the student has to be willing to learn, but I also think that the students feel the passion of the teachers, as I think kids follow adults. Man, just say, oh, these kids. If kids have problems, it's because the adults have a problem.
Yeah.
When you let your kids get out of hand, when you don't teach them to be respectful, when they don't perceive respect in you, when you don't allow your kids to teach you, education is a two-way street, but the one who is possessing the power and the knowledge has the power and the knowledge. And that's how power and knowledge is. Sometimes in adult gatherings, everybody's mad because somebody is the leader. Well, the leader is going to make that call. Yeah. So if anybody plays sports, you're a quarterback on a sports team, you go in the huddle, everybody's saying, oh, throw me the ball, give me the ball, let me run, I'm open up. The quarterback has to say, shut up and run the play. The running back is not saying that. And I think with teaching is that way. And I think that for us as teachers, it's the integrity of our teaching that we're prepared. Victor Goins, a good friend of mine, plays clarinet. We went to kindergarten together. He runs the jazz studies program at Northwestern. And he was a math teacher. And he said, man, my first year teaching math, my students were so smart, they kept me in the woodshed. He said, I would bring my books home because I was afraid when I stood in front of them. Every time they asked me a question, I go, I think that, okay. Yeah. And it's like a certain level of honesty you as a teacher have to have, where you say, look, I don't know the answer to that. Let's learn this. And also the things that you will learn from your students. But a student-teacher relationship is not like peers. And it can't be, like Sweet Citizen and I were not peers. Right. Sometimes I would learn from students, and we would be peers, but when they were teaching me, if I was not able to be humble enough to be taught by them. And now at the age I am now, people that I taught teach me all the time. I ask them to give me examples or show me how to play a certain rhythm or what would this be. And it's some of the greatest thing for me is when a student of mine teaches me something. I like for my son to see, my son who's now 19, I once got a lesson on this Blue Symphony. It was so sad. I was so depressed after I first heard it. I called a friend of mine, Bob Sade, and I said, man, this symphony is so sad. Can you give me a lesson on it? So when he gave me the first lesson I got on it, I had made sure my son came and watched it because I want him to see this is how you take a lesson. Yeah. Act like you want to learn instead of somebody's forcing you. And I find with my own students at Juilliard, I always tell them, listen, you don't have to be in here. We're in a room somewhere in the world. Look outside in the street. Think of all the good things you could be doing that's not being in here. I can feel it myself. But if we're going to be in here, let's try to be great. Yeah. One of the parts of that is ultimately, like that story about your father, it wasn't about you, it wasn't about him, it was about the music. And the question is, what does the music deserve? What does he was very for real about that. Yeah. He wasn't joking. Yeah. Believe me, if you'd have heard him play, and he didn't joke in the way he dealt with people and students either. Yeah. People come to our house all hours of the day and night. That's just how he was. Yeah. And he wasn't like a touchy-feely type of, he was like that generation, kind of post-World War II. He was very, but when it came to like the music and the investment, he was willing to invest. Yeah.
Now, I know we're going to take some questions from students too, and we've got a couple of faculty. So if you could just start looking around and maybe select some students if you have a question to put up your hands. But meanwhile, let me ask you one question. For those of you who are visitors to the conservatory, we don't fold napkins, we do messy work here, okay? So it's not always clean language and prettiness. I'm bringing that up because I want to talk about Dizzy Gillespie.
Oh.
Okay. So there's a...
Are you sure?
I'm going to read it. Dizzy was standing near the dressing room doorway. He handed me his horn and said, "Play me something, man." the context is, I'm just interested in your reflection about the importance of being direct.
I remember
just
that.
getting right to it. And
You
once
should
you
just
hear
read
this,
the
you
passage. Yeah, you read it. I'm
all
not
right.
going to quote it.
He had a real small mouthpiece. I wasn't used to playing that. He didn't know what to say with my daddy standing there, so he said, yeah, really drawn out, as if the length of it could help ease the awkwardness of the moment. And then he leaned down close to me and said, practice, mother.
That's a true story. I was 14. But you got to realize it's not like a 14 like now.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, 14 and you what? It's even, and if you went back 30 years, 14 wasn't even 14. Like each year we become like children. 14-year-old was like a 9-year-old was then.
Yeah.
So then 14, I mean, it was, you know, you can work jobs. I mean, I've been working really since I was 8, not playing music, just working.
Yeah.
It's different style, different type of people. With jazz musicians, that's dizzy. So, of course, my daddy said, hey, Diz, my son's playing trumpet, you check him out. So he gave me his horn. And and his mouthpiece was much shallower than I said, I played something that was terrible. So he just kind of looked at me like, so, you know, he was trying to figure out, well, what am I going to say to him? He was trying to figure out, is this guy serious? And then he said, yeah. It was like a high yeah. Then when he finished, he was still quiet. He said, practice, mother. And then he looked at my daddy and said, my daddy said, yeah. You know, my father was one for that kind of stuff too. Like he would just ask you, what does that sound like? And you'd be, you know, yeah, it was okay. He said, you know, that was your assessment of it? What I loved about how he would do is he would just leave a lot of silence. Like if you were playing something he didn't like, he would say, what are you doing? Yeah, man. And we all called him bruh. Like, I'm playing, bruh. Playing what? So you know that kind of school of, you know they loved you, but they were going to just tell you. It wasn't going to be, your feelings got hurt too bad.
And it's sometimes good to be told.
If you can handle it, you know, if you can't handle it, you know, it's like anything.
Yeah.
It's not for everybody. Some people are really sensitive. I've learned over the years. My younger students taught me how to be more. One story I like to tell is I was teaching a class maybe when I was 26 or 27. I was just, you know, critiquing. Everything was critiqued. So the trumpet player, he was maybe 16 or 17, and he had a lot of respect for me. But me just critiquing him, critiquing was too much. So he's trying to figure out, man, how am I going to get out of this lesson? Like just and I didn't feel like I was being overly, but you never, when you are, you never feel like you are. So he said, Mr. Marsalis, can I respectfully request that you teach me out of the positive frame of reference? And it hit me when he said that, because I was from that school of, you know, man, you sound sad. But that actually was a great lesson for me. Yeah. Because it was not disrespectful. It was nothing about it that was defensive. It was just honest. It was just for real. So that one moment actually helped me a lot in my whole way of teaching. I changed. I would always identify things that are good, because the good things are as important as the bad, more important. Yeah. Because you can learn many times through compliments more than you can learn through being cut down. But if there's only compliments, you know, so it's a balance. But I would think that balance has to be weighted towards the positive frame of reference. And I always think too of teams. Like when you're under a lot of pressure, I always played ball and played on teams. When you're really in crunch time and you're under a lot of pressure, you don't want somebody howling and screaming and cussing at people and cutting them down, because you're trying to win. So it's like, look, shut up. Yeah. And let's concentrate on winning.
Unless you have the ball, shut up.
But you know you got to shut up because I'm throwing it.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to throw it to you. Yeah. Because you're talking.
Yeah.
But sometimes you got to negotiate. Your big guy, something on a basketball team will cuss you out, and you got to get them the ball because you got to win. So you got to not give them the ball a couple of times, and then that next time, okay, we still got to win. Yeah. Questions from students here. Don't be shy. Yes. Kirsten, if you could, thanks. And just introduce yourself, if you would, please.
Hi, I'm Davita.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Do you think you're more passionate about it now that you know what you're doing and you have all these achievements than you were when you didn't know? Like, were you more passionate then or like now?
No, I don't. Maybe I'm more relaxed now. But I was always, once I started wanting to do it, I was always passionate. I always wanted to be good, you know, always wanted to make, first was just to make my father and other musicians respect me. Then just knowing all the people and being blessed to have the opportunity to play and work and be around people. And play with such great musicians, be around so many great people. All these years, you get older, you slow down, you know, just. So yeah, but I always had that feeling, like I always wanted to. I can't say it's more now. I mean, I was hungry. I'm still. I try to channel that hunger.
Yeah.
And I'm not. I weigh more, but I'm still hungry.
I hear you sometimes sleep now too.
Yeah, I have to sleep now. When I was younger, I would be sleeping 2-3 hours for years. I thought, man, that's pretty good. I don't even have to sleep.
Yeah.
After I got 50.
A question from this side, perhaps.
My name is Marshall. I'm a jazz studies major.
Where are you?
Okay.
Okay,
Oh, there you are. Hi.
How do you keep your ideas like fresh? So how do you keep going, doing what you're doing? I feel like it gets a little mundane doing the same thing all the time. So
I play a lot of music. I work on a lot of music. And I listen to a lot of other people's music, and I play a lot of their music. So I'm not relying on just myself. I play Vincent Gardner's music, Ted Nash's music. In the band, we all write music. So I also am always around different kind of students and people who like different types of music. And I try to always learn something and be around people who are doing things and studying things. And also, I mean, I act crazy most of the time. My son was saying, my 19-year-old son, I have a 6-year-old daughter, and the first time I realized my 6-year-old daughter will like sing songs about her farting, and she'll literally get up at 5:30 in the morning and start talking and singing and running around and jumping and dancing and talking and singing and making up scenarios and coming up with, and I'll be saying, man, she acts like me. And because my son knows, he would say I was so crazy that he would say, man, people should see you do this crazy stuff that you actually do. So I said, you know what? I know my daughter is playing around. So she made me realize something. I told him, you see how y'all, because my 3 sons always say, man, we ought to do a reality video on you people, just how crazy you are and how much wild stuff you're capable of saying and doing, how crazy you act around here. So I said, you know what? I realized that when I'm actually here, this is when I'm actually normally myself, like when I'm talking to y'all. But when I'm in my house, where you think a person is normal, like my daughter, I'm actually acting crazy like her. So I think your creativity is something, you know, you just have to, creativity is not about music, it's not about ideas, it's just creativity. And if you keep that kind of craziness in you and that thing, you don't feel bad about doing your thing and making up stuff and clowning and playing around. Because play is one of the best ways to express your creativity. And I'm not going to tell you I get down and play with action figures, but playing around,
Yeah.
I think is a way to stay creative.
Just following up on that, so that playing around, that staying creative, that continuing to explore, one of the things that you've faced, and so many of these students will face too, especially if they sort of take a very personal road, is they'll have people saying, no, that's the wrong way, or what you're doing doesn't really matter. What keeps you going through?
You know, for me, it's hard to, sometimes it's hard for me to give advice on that. Like I would always tell my own kids, because everybody's life is so different. Like for me, growing up in the 60s and 70s, when Martin Luther King was killed, I was always, when I grew up, I was only in a complete black segregated environment. Thorough Southern, like absolute segregation. Yeah. Louisiana towns like Opelousas, Breaux Bridge, Lil Farms. It's like a way of life that maybe you wouldn't even, you think you see it in a movie, that people didn't live like that. They did. Then when King was killed, I was sent to, my mother sent me and my brother to a school that was all white.
Yeah.
I mean, you just never be called so many niggas and monkeys and just it's like the teachers cheating you out of grades. It's just the level of, it was just that system. But I don't want to also give you the impression that the impact on me was like it would be to somebody from this time. It was very much of that time. Yeah. So it wasn't like you thought, is this from Mars? That was life then. Yeah. But I knew the feeling of, from that time, from maybe 4th to 7th or 8th grade, the feeling of you're in a certain situation. And you got to deal with that situation. It's not going to be, people going to critique you, they're not going to like you, it's not going to be fair. It'll be little things, but it was never complete.
Yeah.
It was never every person. So it'd be a lot of people messing with you, but then it would be some other people who would be like, I'm with you. Like once when I was in I would just fight constantly. I didn't care if you called me a nigga, you messed with me, I was gonna fight. That was my credo. And sometimes it resulted in a lot of little booty whippings that I had to receive. I handed out some, but some were also handed to me. Okay, it was not a movie, it was real life. So once the biggest guy in our class, name was John, he came to me once after one really good humdinger in the cafeteria. He said, "Man, you serious about this?" I said, "Yeah, man, I'm serious." He said, "Man, I'm with you the next time they mess with you." And then after that, the amount of booty whippings went down precipitously. So, it's not clearly, and it's, and then it becomes other things, like if from an intellectual standpoint, anything you do that goes against the status quo, anything you do that's trying to actually lift people, you're going to be slapped down for that. That's why our country is in the condition it's in. We lie all
There's
the time.
always someone who thinks you're not in your place, right? There's always someone trying to judge.
Man, coming from where I'm coming from, yeah.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
And it's worse when you get in the intellectual circles. Yeah. When you're dealing with ignorance or, you deal with rednecks, I much prefer dealing with that. Yeah. It's right there in front of you. And once you deal with them, their vibe is, yeah, man, okay. We speak in the same language. Yeah. Whereas there's another language that is spoken that's very difficult to decipher. Laws are changed, rules are changed, districts are rezoned, it becomes official. And no one wants to change those things. Yeah. There's no will to change that.
Yeah. I think we have time, and I forgot to put on a watch so I could actually keep track of time. Yes, we do have time for a couple more questions. Oh, one right here too. Kirsten, up the front. If you could, hang on just a second so the microphone can get to you so everyone can hear your question too, please.
Hello, my name is Jasmine. I'm a dance major. My question is, the reality is you need money to survive. So I guess it's hard for me to decipher whether I should be focusing my life on specifically artistic growth, but the reality is I have student loans that I'm gonna have to pay off. So it's like, was there ever a point for you where you had to focus on, did the financial growth just naturally come, or did you have to say, okay, this is where I want to be financially, so I have to make steps to that?
Well, I never had nothing. We never had anything. Nobody we knew had anything. So the word financial growth, I never heard that. I'm trying to give you a sense of what I'm telling you. Guys in my neighborhood will come say, "Hey, Marsalis, can we come to your house so we can see what it's like to have a daddy?" I don't even know how to explain the horizon of aspiration in that area. When I graduated from high school, I got every grant, every money you could make just off of them. My father, your dad's making what? A year? So I never thought, but I always worked a job. So I always had money. From the time I was 8 years old, my mom used to always make me laugh. She said, "Ooh, child, you work harder than me." I kept a job. I was cutting grass. I was working at a gas station. I worked in a sweet shop. I worked in a restaurant. And once I figured you could make money playing a trumpet, playing music, Man, you realize you could come home from a gig and you would have like $25 and you didn't have to, you know how long it take you to make $25 working in a gas station with Bossy Clay cussing you out? Man, he was working there for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So I also didn't spend a lot of money. So I always worked. So I never had any point that I did not work in my life. I kept a job. And I would always tell my kids, you know, I like to make them make it on their own. I tell them, I have money, I could give you the money, but I'm not gonna do that. Because you got to make it. And when you have to make it, it makes you be inventive. Now, a lot of times with the loans and all of this scam, you know, healthcare scams, it's too bad. You know, I've had so many students just come to me crying over the weight of their loans later. They're not 18 or 19, they're 27, they're 28. And it's part of what we need to change about our country, but we have to all be hungry about it. We don't like to stick with stuff. We don't like to do that. We like for everything to just, well, they're gonna take care. There's no they, they're not gonna take care of it. But my suggestion always is, yeah, if you can't eat, you can't survive. But you gotta hustle. And many times if you've been hustling your whole life, you're willing to do stuff that somebody who ain't really hustling. Now sometimes you're a dancer, you know, you'll be dancing or doing something physical and you think, boy, this is exhausting. And then somebody else will come out there and they'll be like, you tired, and they're warming up. People who play ball always experience that. You think you're hustling, then somebody who's hustling comes out. You know, so I know that's not advice, but it's just, yeah, you know, figure out how to combine what you want to do with your life with how to make some money. And if not, work on the side. Just keep chipping away at it. And I by nature was frugal. I never had nothing I really wanted to buy. Even to this day, I can't think, what do I really want to buy? I don't really want to buy nothing. And I never wanted to because I never had nothing. I never thought about, man, if I could get this kind of house, if I could get this car, or if I could have this suit, or if I could have this. I never really thought in those terms. So one lesson I'm gonna leave you with, I know I'm giving you a long lesson. My daddy, I had a contentious, in my house, we didn't get along. My senior year, I really should have been out of my house. I shouldn't have been at home when I was 17. I was ready to go. And when I had all my stuff in a box. I had some jeans, shirts, some tapes and stuff. So before I was leaving, when I graduated from high school, a week later I left. So I left triumphantly, like y'all are not ever gonna see me again. Okay? You don't have to worry, I'm not ever coming back here, y'all can kiss my... I didn't say that. That was before this era, so you didn't, you know, that could have resulted in some injuries. But my attitude was very much like, I can't wait to get out of here. And my daddy stopped me as I was walking out the door. He said, hey man, is that your stuff? He was very upbeat and positive. Like his vibe was, I'm glad you're leaving. He said, is that your stuff? I said, yeah, that's my stuff. He said, are you all right? I said, I'm all right. He said, what you got in the box? I said, jeans, such. He said, open the box. The box was taped. I was like, come on, man. He said, no, man. You know. I said, okay, man. I opened the box. I had a bunch of tapes of like everything from like Miles Davis Ricks to Blue Symphonies, everything I had, then on cassette tapes. We didn't have CDs and all that. And I had a boom box. So he counted stuff in it, a boom box. He said, are you okay? I said, yeah, man, I'm all right. He said, you sure you're all right? Yeah, man, I'm all right. He said, okay. He said, okay, man, just remember, whatever happens to you in your life, you can go back to the contents of that box and you're all right. There you go. So I always, when I have to cut my losses, because I did a lot of little dumb stuff out of it that cost me money. Cut your losses. I'm not tied to anything. And a lot of it I trace back to kind of his attitude, but that was a profound lesson for me. You all right? Yeah, I'm all right. You all right? Yeah, I'm all right. Okay, you're all right. Does that make sense? You got to believe in yourself too. Hustle.
Yeah. One last question, Bob. You said there was someone down here.
Hi, is this on? Hello? Hi, I'm Raquel, music therapy major. I was just kind of wondering, I know for me, I had problems finding out what's my passion, what do I really want to do? So when did you kind of figure out that, you know, music was your passion?
Did you ever not know?
Yeah, I was in basketball. I actually had a scholarship to go to high school to play basketball. I was in basketball practice. And I was thinking, man, Because, you know, the band, okay, was, and I didn't play that good, really. I played okay. But I was thinking, man, I spent my whole life like in a gym shooting basketball. And I just decided I want to be a musician. I started listening to John Coltrane before. I put on this John Coltrane record. It's called Giant Steps. Me and my brother actually went in the front room where all my daddy's records were. We had all our records. We had like maybe 30, 40 records. We had our records laid out on the ground with his. There's a couple of records we liked because they had some fine ladies on the cover of it. So we'd always say, pull that one out. So we would look at that, you know, Miles Davis, someday my prince will come. Back, man, that's a nice album cover. So we, some kind of way, we'd start looking at his album covers and ours. And ours were like, back in the day, you know, Ohio Players, Honey, just Parliament Funkadelic. So we were like, man, look at why do all our records look like something stupid is going on? And all of his records look like something intelligent is happening. So it was just really like an association in the moment. It was nothing philosophical. So we started looking at it, and he said to me, man, something about train. It was something we said about, because my father had a picture of John Coltrane in our house. Coltrane had come to New Orleans in 1963, and it was like Coltrane was like, it was like a shrine of my father with Coltrane and a couple of New Orleans musicians. He said, man, that's the dude that's on this picture. So we looked at the picture, and this is how ignorant we were. We lived with John Coltrane, we lived with our dad. I said, man, I'm gonna put his record on. I put the record on Giant Steps. I was like, damn, I like John Coltrane. I started to wonder, I wonder if I could learn how to play like that, even though it was on the trumpet. And then I found out he played with Miles Davis and so on and so forth. So then I was kind of passionate about, you know, I wanted to play. But even if I had not made it playing, I was always going to be somebody who loved the music, you know, because I love the musicians. And I think that, you know, music therapy, that's a noble profession. I have a brother that's autistic, severely autistic. And you would always think that he would be a person who music therapy was great for, all the musicians we have, but it's not the case with him. He mainly likes people to leave him alone. That's the best therapy for him. If you leave, he figured out that if he reaches up and you kiss him, you're gonna leave. So whenever you get around him too much, he starts. And then if you kiss him and you don't leave, he doesn't. Maybe you don't understand what this means. But, you know, so many good professions that are related. And I always think for people who don't know exactly what they want to do, I always say, do whatever is right next to you to do. Do something. When something is in front of you, do it, and that will lead you to the next thing. But don't do nothing. Because one axiom that is true is what you do is what you will do. What you do is what you will do. If you work, you're going to work. If you complain, you're going to complain. If you practice, you're going to practice. And if you don't do those things, does that make some type of sense? Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
So listen, everyone, we've come to the end of this meeting, this gathering. It's been such a delight to have you here. Thank you for taking your time and being with us. And I know you're here for about a day and a half more for this residency. And thank you so much for working with our students too.
Oh, that's my honor, and I like your socks.